Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. I guess it is. My name is Dave Lamb, and I'm from the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And I just have a little webinar here about taking your first steps. So this is going to be about what it's like to start a company and what we would want to do to get involved in what those first steps look like if you've got an idea. A little bit about myself. I was a professor at the university several years, and then I decided to start teaching entrepreneurship. But in order to develop the credibility of teaching entrepreneurship, I felt like I needed to start my own company. So I did start a company. It was called Cuts Floral Distributors, where we brought flowers in from all over the United States and from all over the world, actually. We went to Colombia, South America, and Africa, and Israel, and all over, brought flowers in, brokered them into Florida, and then shipped them up to the Midwest, and then we shipped them to grocery stores and small flower shops around Nebraska. So in order to feel like I had the credibility to start a company, I wanted to start a company in order to talk to students. We sold that company about 3 years ago, so I know what it's like to also sell one. We started the company from scratch. There was no business before that, and so we didn't purchase a business. And then we're starting another company. My wife and I are partners in companies, and we have a company now involving passive income. So we look at real estate. We have several properties in Arizona and Colorado, and then in Nebraska. We work on stocks. We do hunting leases. We have a farm out by Shickley, Nebraska, and then we do leasing for the agronomic side of that farm. Currently, I'm working with the Center for Rural Affairs and working on a series of courses, short courses, on what's called CEO School. So that's the next thing that I'm working on as I think about these ways to help entrepreneurs get started in their businesses. So the first thing that I think about when I was putting this together, I was thinking about the emotions in starting. And I think about the fear, the excitement, the stress, the anticipation. When we started our company, all these were happening. The confidence that you have that you're going to be successful, but also the scare, the fear that you aren't going to be successful and that you're going to fail. And so all these emotions are happening at the same time. So it's amazing that you can feel that way starting a company, but it is true. For any of those that have started, if any of you have started a company, be sure to write in the chat or do a question and answer. We're going to do a little bit of question and answer afterwards. But if you want to do, if you have a question or something, I'd be glad to help you with that as we go along. But all of these emotions are things that you think about on the front end of starting a company. And then these are the first steps that I think about is if you do have an idea, if you are thinking about solving a problem for other people, the first things that I think about is of course the idea, what that looks like. And then understanding your customer, understanding who they are, and then understanding your numbers. Can you make money? So I teach a business plan writing class. And I've done that for about 14 years now. And I always tell the students that the first thing you need to know is, do you have a market? In other words, do you have customers? And then the other question is do you know your numbers? Do you understand, can I make money? Can I be profitable? And then build a plan. So I'm a big planner. So I think about planning and thinking about what that looks like to go to those next steps. It also helps you build processes to build the plans. And then the next thing I think about is to seek funding, to look for money if you need it, and then to start the business. So that's kind of the taking the first steps in starting a company. Brennan went over with you last week about ideas and how to find ideas. Either you're solving someone's problem or your problem, or you're also adding value to somebody's life. So it's something that somebody may not have even known that they needed, and yet you're bringing that idea to them or that product or service to them and giving them the information that they need. Another thing is to brainstorm with other people. I do a lot of coaching here on campus, so I do meet one-on-one with students typically who have business ideas. It's amazing what the students here on campus do as far as starting companies, side gigs, as well as regular full-fledged companies. But I do one-on-one quite a bit with grad students and then with undergraduates too. And we just brainstorm ideas, just think through what are all the things that could happen, what are all the things that you need to know, and what are the next steps. And it is a stepwise process. So think about the problems that you have, just like I mentioned before, and think about the problems that other people might have. And then think about what might make your life or others' lives more enjoyable. Same kind of concepts about, how to find those ideas and how to think through. But having people around you to brainstorm them are really, really important, because you can find, a lot of answers to questions just by talking to other people. So understanding your customer. What do we think about that? What are you solving? What are you solving, or what are you adding value to their life with? And then what is their persona? So when I think about personas, I think, where do they hang out? Where do these people hang out? Are they male or mostly female in their persona? Are they college educated or not? Tend to belong to organizations? Do they tend to live in other neighborhoods, like neighborhoods close to you, or different neighborhoods? Where do these people live? What do they look like? What is the customer that you're trying to attract? What's the ideal customer for you? And then how often are they in need of this product or service? That determines a lot about either if it's a product, like how often you would produce it, and then also, or bring it in. And then also for service, how often do they need this? Like in the case of house cleaning, for example, you would do that every week, so to speak, sometimes twice a week, depending on the client. But in the case of other things, they may only need it once every 5 years. In the case of like a battery for your car, for example, you may only need that once every 5 years. So the question is how do you think about the customers in those two situations? And then how many people have this problem you're solving? So that's back to that numbers of people that you think would have the problem, or the wanting to establish their livelihood. What would help them, and how often, and how many people are there that do that? So how to understand your customer. These are some ideas of how to get started with that. And interviewing is I teach another course. It's a marketing course, entrepreneurial marketing course, and we have focused our entrepreneurial marketing on understanding customers. So this is about interviewing people. So finding out those customers, knowing where they hang out, knowing who they are, and then starting to, try to figure out, like, what are their problems? What are they trying to solve? What are they doing? Is it anything close to what you are thinking that actually solves their problem? Find out what those problems are, see if it matches what you believe to be the solution. So all of us Sometimes in our business ideas, we think that we've got the proper solution, but if we don't have customers that are willing to pay us for those solutions, then it won't make any difference. We always say you don't have a company if you don't have customers, and then tweak the product or service based on their feedback. So that's where we talk about pivoting. So we think about pivots as those areas where you know are going to happen. So once you get an idea, the next step is to go out and find out if other people believe that the idea that you have is actually something that they would want. Once you figure that out, you're also asking them, what would you make, how would you make this better? And how would you improve it so that you build something that people really want? So the question here is, and the whole point of this understanding the customer is basically to reduce risk. So we all know that starting a company is a very risky endeavor, or can be a risky endeavor depending on what the business is. And so in order to reduce risk, we want to understand who the customer is before we even build anything. This was really true of the tech market with some of these apps that people were building, and the technology that people were working on. It actually came from the Silicon Valley, where people were thinking about building things, and people who build apps and are technology oriented are usually kind of involved and kind of into that. And so they don't really think about the customer as much as they think about what cool app they could build or what cool thing they could make. And so we all kind of went, well, wait a minute, you can build all this, but if you don't have a good customer base, it won't matter whether you built it or not. So this is a way, then we call this a way to reduce risk in your company. So if you don't have customers, there's no reason to even build the business. And similarly, it's important to understand your numbers. So are customers willing to pay above what it costs you to bring the product or service to the market? So it's not enough that customers will pay you what it costs you to bring it to the market. Are customers willing to pay you above what it costs you to bring it to the market? In other words, margin or markup. So is there enough profit if they are willing to? So that's the other thing they want to know. That's the other thing we want to know. Number two, if there are, is there enough profit that you would do it? So I tell that to my students a lot of times in class, is we talk about profit and break even, and we talk about how that works in reality. So the question then is, if it costs you $5 to bring a product to the marketplace, can you sell it for 10 or 12 or 14 or 20 or whatever that looks like for you? Is there enough profit there that you would even do it? And of course, are there enough customers, and do they want it often enough that you would actually manufacture it, or you would actually provide it as a service into the marketplace? And then the third point is, are there opportunities to either increase the volume or increase the margin? So we think about the opportunities to increase volume by, are there enough people out there that would buy your product or service? And or is there enough margin? Is there enough markup that you can bring that would increase the margin? So either are there opportunities to increase volume or opportunities to increase the margin? So like I said, if something's for $5 to bring it to the cost to the marketplace, can you sell it for $10 or $20? And is there opportunities to increase that margin? And then understanding your numbers. Estimate the cost of the product or service you wish to provide. So again, you're estimating. So sometimes people have a confusion about this. Estimates are actually a good thing. They are not numbers pulled out of the air. So you just don't take a number and come out the air with it. It's estimating the costs in the best way possible. So for example, if you need to know insurance costs, you actually call an insurance agent and you say to them, I am about to start or am getting close to starting a company. And this is the company it is, and explain to them what it is. And then figure out, like, have them tell you what are the kinds of insurance that I need and how much would those costs be. So that's not really an estimate. That's actually, pretty close to being true about what's going to happen. But it could vary a little bit depending on when you start the business and so forth. I will also mention here is that this starting phase can vary depending on the type of business it is. But we always tell people that we like to push the starting phase to as little time as possible and yet still get the due diligence and the information that you need that's helpful to start the company. Sometimes people will do a business and they'll start it right away. And then they haven't really done all the numbers. They haven't looked at the customers and what they really want. And they tend to fail at a pretty high rate. They've got a high risk. They've put a lot of money into it, maybe their own money, and then they tend to fail. We don't like to promote that, but we don't like to promote people, kind of studying their business for years and years before they even start it. So there's a fine line, and of course this is based on the business type it is, but a fine line between moving forward and making progress with starting your business and then taking too long to get it going, so that the numbers that you have, in this case, the numbers are then outdated. Like if it takes you 2 or 3 years, you estimate numbers at the front end, then you have to estimate again because your numbers are outdated because you have not been current enough in your start. Mark up the product or service at a point where you believe people would purchase it. So the next step would be to estimate the costs of starting the product or service, what that would look like. And then mark up the product or service at a point where you believe people would purchase it. So give it that margin. It's a markup, so to speak. It's a pricing of that product or service. So price it so that you think it would be acceptable to the marketplace. And then trial it with a few customers. Maybe you would give them a deal or give them a lower price just in exchange for some feedback. So that's another way people can kind of figure out where their pricing or where their numbers should be, is to figure out just get some feedback from other people by giving them a better deal and kind of exchange the information back with them. Take that feedback, step number 4, and adjust your price to fit the market. So take that feedback back. People say, well, it's too high, then maybe you would adjust that. Or if it needs to be higher, that they find more value in it than what you're charging people, that would be a way to increase your price or an opportunity to increase your margin. And then again, just like we've always mentioned before in these other slides, determine if there's enough profit here for you to live. So you have to understand your numbers, your personal numbers. When we talk about understanding your numbers, we talk about understanding the business numbers, but we also talk about understanding your personal numbers. Is there enough profit in this particular business for you to live? And so that's kind of important. The next thing we talk about is building a plan. So this is the written business plan. This is super helpful. I know that people, have a different views about how, business plans should be written and what should be included in them and what banks are looking for and what's needed in the plan. But I teach this. I've been teaching it for about 14 years. We actually have students go out and show their plans after they've been written to bankers and to investors and to people who would potentially give them money. And they always come back with, this is really good. Like the plan that they've written is really well done. And it's really something that helps them understand what the business actually is. So the written plan is actually really important. It shows that you care enough about your business and your idea that you would be willing to write out what are the aspects of it, what are the processes in it, what are the critical risks in it, what are the things that we need to know, who's going to be actually involved in this business. And it shows yourself that you can see in writing how this plan would work out. It's also important for those people that you're going to share this with, those bankers, those investors, those people that you're going to ask for money from or ask to be external partners in your business, in the case of the investor or banker. It shows that you care enough that you would write it out for them so that they can refer back to it instead of you just verbalizing it to them. So the elements of a business plan are the executive summary. So I always tell people that the first thing that a seasoned banker or investor is going to read is the executive summary. That's kind of a recap of the whole business idea. And it should tell you about some of the numbers, some of the profits that you can make, or the break-even analysis. But it also should tell you who the customers are, what the business it actually is, and what it is you're trying to accomplish or solve by that. And then the other thing they look at is the management team. So number 4 there. So they'll look at the executive summary. They want to know what the business is actually about. That should be about a 1-page written. And then the management team should be people external and people internal to your business that you actually know. So do you know an insurance agent? So list that person. Do you know an accountant? List that person. Do you know an attorney? List who that is. As well as these people that would be internal. How many part-time people do you need? How many contract people do you need? How many do you need a manager? Do you need a sales force? Do you need other people in the business? And so those are the kinds of people that you would need for the business. And so a seasoned investor or banker is going to look at those 2 things probably the most. They're also going to be interested in your character. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Are you good for your word? Does the plan make sense? Do you think that it would be successful here in the Midwest or wherever you're building your plan? So it's got to have those vision, mission, and goal statements. It's got to have a market research. So we talked about customer discovery, where you're figuring out who your customer is. That's part of market research. But there's more to market research than that. Market research involves knowing who your competitors are, knowing a little bit more about what the price that the customers would be willing to pay, things that you're interested in, knowing more about the industry. What's the projection of the industry? Is it positive, or is it a dying industry? And why is that true? And so that's important in that area. Management team, we talked about already. That's the people that you know, that you're gonna like. So sometimes I talk to students or people, and I think about like, who's the ideal person for your business. Somebody that you wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't necessarily work for you, but it's somebody that you know that you're like, if I had an opportunity to hire a person like that, that's the type of person I would want for this business. And so it's just those characteristics of the people that you plan to hire for the business that would make that even better as a plan. Critical risks are those things that you know are going to happen. That's that risk management piece we talked about earlier, with also knowing your customer. But also critical risks are understanding that there's going to be issues with this business. Every business has them. It's not all going to be perfect every single time, every day, every product that comes out. But what are the issues that you're going to deal with? And then how are you going to circumvent them? How are you going to adjust for them? How are you going to think about them so that people can learn from your from this and also make the business better? So understanding what those risks are and understanding how to manage those risks. And then you need an estimated income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. Always remembering that the balance sheet has to balance. The income statement is a listing of the income, the revenue, and then the expenses. And that is, the income statement is considered in accounting terms to be a movie. So it's a moving part. It keeps changing every time someone purchases something from you, every time you pay a bill, every time something happens within the business in terms of activity, then it'll reflect on the income statement. The balance sheet is more of a snapshot. It's like a photo of the business. It doesn't move every time something happens in the business, but it will move over time, probably on a year-to-year basis. And then cash flow. Cash flow is very similar to the income statement. The only difference with that is cash flow allows for the payback of a loan, and it allows for purchasing of equipment, which the income statement does not. The last section of the business plan should be an exit strategy. I know that's a weird thing to think about because you're just getting started, and it's exciting, and it's scary, and it's nerve-wracking all at the same time. But at this moment, when you're building a plan, you should also be thinking about what would happen if I had to leave that business, or if I wanted to sell the business. Sometimes people just build businesses to have for a while and then to exit. That's the goal, is to build this, own it for 2 to 5 years, and then sell it. There are times where people build business plans to sell. So this business plan that you're writing could actually be sold to someone else as well. If you build it correctly, it would be something that somebody else would want to promote or to pitch to another investor, and then they would do that. So sometimes people are really good at writing. They can write business plans. But the exit strategy is a strategy for you to think through what happens when the time comes that I'm leaving this company. We wrote a business plan for our business. It was for 15 years, and we had the business for 14 years. So that was, kind of important to me, that I knew that we weren't going to have the business forever and that we would sell it at some point. And so that's why we actually wrote an exit strategy in it. So in order to seek funding, you share your idea. So you share your business plan, you verbalize it, you're able to communicate with it. You pitch your plan, which is a shorter version of the presentation. So you present your plan, but the pitch is a short version of how you think about presenting your plan and sharing it. And who you do that to is banks or credit unions, and then investors, angel or venture capital people. And sometimes family. So there's times where you need to talk to your family about this, and they're willing to help or they want to help. And so that's a great way to get some funding, and keep the, what if there's a uh, interest or dividend or something, can go back to the family and make them some money too, and so forth. And then also another place to find funding is through your personal savings. Um, and then in order to start your business, so this is when we think about starting the company itself, find the location or rent if possible. So we always suggest people to not build buildings or buy land unless you absolutely have to. So rent if possible, especially for the first couple years, just to reduce risk. It's back to that risk management piece, but also to reduce your costs, so that will also help your cause when you go to a bank or an investor or a family member. So know that you're willing to rent something if possible. You don't need to build a new building, and that's very true. Purchase your equipment and other needs like software. So this is all after you've gotten funding. So you're assuming now that someone has allowed you, or that you have personal savings enough to actually start this company. So this is the things that you're looking for. You're looking for a location, a place to put the business. Or if it's in your home, then that's really good because you don't have to worry about finding a location. The purchases of equipment, software, other things that you're going to need for this business. You won't You need the funding first before you're actually purchasing this equipment or the software. QuickBooks comes to mind, or other accounting software comes to mind. You might have special software that you need for your business, your particular business, that you need to purchase. There could be licensing, or there could be permits that you need, and that would all kind of fall under that same area. Just those things that are critical for you to even actually be able to operate the company. So some people would maybe have a social media or website development that they need to think through. A lot of social media is free. The website is also costs money, so you have to think about that. The um, network. So you need to think through your network, your customers, anybody that you want to hire, either contract or W-2, what we call W-2 wages, which means they'll be coming into work, consistently every day for you and with you. And then, so who are the people that you need to know externally, and who are the people you need to know internally to the business, and what kind of networks you need to develop. Prototype how to get some of the business started so that people know that you exist, which is part of the social media and the website development, but it's also prototyping. So, prototyping in the case of products and in the case of services, where you just try things out, do it for a reasonable price. We mentioned that earlier, and then kind of test the market, and then do some tweaks based on what you find out. Set up your office and your workspace, and then start thinking about your processes. So, how do you invoice people, or how do people pay you for the service or product that you're giving them? What do you do for hours? How many hours a week are you open? How does that look? When do you start? When do you end? Are you answering phones after hours? Are you keeping phones? Are you leaving them to go to a voicemail afterwards? How does it look in your particular workplace? Um, so that was my last slide. I'm going to stop sharing and then see if there's anything that anyone needs from me for questions or anything like that for starting, how to start a company. it's an exciting time to start a company. So it's interesting it's an interesting feeling when you're getting that first start of your company and to know what you're doing. I always like to tell people too, no regrets. Do this, and have the experience, but do not have a regret about how to start your company, because it's very rewarding to match customers and their thoughts with yours, and to make those connections. It's very important. I've got a question. When do you decide to incorporate or LLC? It's a great question. The question for LLC or incorporation is different based on the type of company it is. For example, if this were a food industry, I would have an LLC so fast it would make your head spin, because an LLC is really important in case somebody gets sick or something happens with food. But in the case of, let's say, a social media business where you're doing social media for people, for different companies, I would say not really so much. You don't need to be in a hurry to do it. I'm coaching a person right now that's a videographer. She's starting a videography business and doing weddings, but she's also doing, videography for ag, businesses as well. And so she said, well, when should I start my LLC? Well, I think maybe after you've had the 10th or 12th, or maybe when you start doing business for people that you don't know very well, then I would say you would do that. If your business is very risky, like in other words, if there's a lot of water involved where somebody could slip and fall, or if there's things about your business, there's a lot of lifting where somebody could get hurt, I would say do an LLC sooner rather than later. So it all depends. It's a great question. Comes up a lot.
Hey,
And
Dave,
then,
we have a question in the Q&A.
yeah, I see it. So the same thing there. You can start without a lawyer, but this is my view on lawyers. They're good people to know, just in case. We work with an attorney even now with our passive income business, and it's good to have them on your side. I like to bring in the attorney when it's appropriate, like we just mentioned with the LLC, but there could be contracts that you need to have written, or you might have some other factors of your business. Maybe there's trademarks, or there's other things. Maybe there's in some of your cases, you might even have IP, intellectual property, that you might want to protect. So it kind of depends on the business again, but I would say attorneys are very important, and I would probably get involved with them sooner again rather than later. So somebody's asking, if I want to start up multiple side hustles, can I do these under one LLC name? Oh, that's a great question. I would say that's a great question. So the question is, if I have several aspects to my business or several businesses within businesses, do I need an LLC for each one of those businesses? Again, that depends on the type of businesses they are. Side photography businesses, like this is an example, marketing consultant. Those two businesses, I would say, like a marketing consultant and a photography business, I would probably put those all under one and call that one business. But there's times where the IRS would not like it if you did something like a photography business, and then you did something very different as a business too. Like, let's say you were an agronomist, or you had an agronomist, and you were owned land and you had a farm and so forth, and then you did this photography. Those would probably be two different businesses. Probably neither one of them need to have an LLC right away, but at some point, depending on the size of their business, you might want to think about two different LLCs for those. Again, that costs money, because to set up an LLC is like $800 or $900, $700 sometimes, depending on what the business is. But it's going to take some money to do that. So sometimes you want to do that. Now, sometimes people will say for rental property, well, you need an LLC for each rental property. Well, that would be crazy. So sometimes I think maybe an LLC for rental property in one state, LLC for rental property in another state would be good. And all those rental properties would be under one. So that's another one. So one of them, Vince is asking about a nonprofit service. So the nonprofit service would be something that you would think about. The way I think about nonprofits is the nonprofit, the revenue is different. It comes from either a grant or typically from donations. I like to think about those two things that are linked for revenue, but you still have all the expenses of a regular business. So you still have insurance to pay, and you still have labor to pay, and you still have, all the different fixed costs that go along with, and actually variable costs that go along with a regular business. It's just the revenue model, the money coming in is a little different. I like to think about like building up a donation pool of like $1 million or $2 million or however much you need, and then just like take out the dividend from that investment, or take out the interest from that investment, and then use that to operate your business. So that's one way to do it. But then of course there's grants and things that you can write too. So that's really important as well. Okay. Nonprofit's very important. I'm on the board of a nonprofit there in Omaha. It's in the American Reforestation Initiative. So we're trying to work on the 1 trillion trees project. So we're replanting trees along the riverbeds, so forth, in the Omaha, sort of Nebraska area at first, and then we're going to go across the nation. And it's all about climate change and helping in that area, plus also reforesting our nation. So that's another thing that I'm involved in. Anybody else? Any questions? I see I've got another one in the Q&A. What should one consider in beginning a 1 to 2 person consulting business? Starting a consulting business, the first thing I would consider, if you are partnering, this is the way I think about it. Make sure it's the right partner. My daughter has her own dental practice, and I tell her, I say, make sure anyone that you want to partner with is Jesus himself, because it's really hard to find a good person to work with. So if we're thinking about the partnering in a consulting business, and as people are connected that way, then make it clear like who's responsible for what, have a partnership agreement. But if this is about like just starting a consulting business on your own, and it's just another person that works for you, then that's pretty similar to like any other kind of business. They'll have their check or their paycheck, and then you'll just kind of pay them for their work that they do. That's another way to set it up. But in a consulting firm, it seems like it would be more partnership driven or more equal, as you think about how this is going to look. So that's another thing to think about is make sure you're getting the right person that you want to work with. I worked with my wife. She and I were partners basically in our business, 50-50 partners, although I think it should be like 49-51%. So you've got somebody making decisions if you're not closely related like we were. But without her, I wouldn't even start the company because she was the backbone of it. I did all the finance and she did all the connecting with people and the buying and did all that work. So it worked out really, really good, and I think that's true in any kind of, I don't know if this is a partnership, this consulting business or not, but any kind of partnership, it's like you have your responsibilities that the other people, doesn't have to be just two people, the other people have their responsibilities. And that's always, I think, the best way to do a partnership of any kind. So at 1 o'clock, I'm meeting with a group of grad students. I've got 2 grad students that are working on a minimalist project. So they're working on they're entomology majors. So they're working with bees, but they also live in a tiny home, and they're they're blogging and they're recording videos on what it's like to live in a tiny home and what it's like to be in a minimalist environment and how much money you can save by doing that, so forth. So it's kind of fun. Kim, is there anything else you need from me? Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I think unless we have others that have any questions for Dave, I think we are probably good to wrap things up. Maybe
Okay.
if you can, maybe in the next 10 seconds, if you can get your question into Dave. Otherwise, I'm going to say we're probably good. But until then, I'm just going to say, Dave, thank you for joining us today for our third part of our series. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Kim. And if anybody would like to visit with me, you can find my contact information on unl.edu under the Engler Agribusiness Entrepreneurship Program. I meet with people all the time. That's what I do for a living, is I meet with people, brainstorm with them, talk to them about their business ideas. That's my job. And so if any of you ever want to meet through Zoom or any time you want to just talk about some issue that you're having or want to think about, like, I've got a lot of resources too, like I know people that maybe could help you. So I just want to let you know that, and I want to hopefully everybody with your starts, if you're starting a company soon, or if you're thinking about it, like, all the best of luck. I know what it's like to do what you're doing and where you're going. So I would love to just share with you anything that you need from me.
Excellent.
And with that, I think I'll take off, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dave. And everybody, if you are interested in seeing part 1 and 2 of our series, you can find those videos on YouTube. If you search for our Do Space YouTube channel, you would be able to watch part 1 and part 2 of this series. Part 3 will also be in either later this week or this weekend. It usually sometimes takes it can take up to about 7 days for us to get our videos up on YouTube. But if you're interested, you can rewatch this one and watch the first 2 on our Do Space YouTube channel. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Tune in next week for part 4 of our series with this Engler Entrepreneurship Program. So thank you, Dave, and thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of your week.